But look, what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still on.
What happens when daytime television's loudest table runs headfirst into one of the most polarizing voices in conservative politics? You get chaos. Not just the regular chaos that lives and breathes on The View's soundstage, but the kind that spills into courtrooms, headlines, and into the living rooms of millions of Americans. When Charlie Kirk dropped a $100 million lawsuit on The View, he didn't just file a legal complaint. He lit a match inside a studio already drenched in gasoline. And it didn't take long for the flames to catch. It started with an insult, a casual swipe, really. One of the hosts, Hostin, delivered a comment about uneducated white women who voted for Donald Trump. It wasn't new. It wasn't even particularly surprising, but it was layered with the kind of smugness that's become a trademark on that set. What she didn't anticipate? That this time, someone was paying attention. Someone with lawyers. Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point USA, has been a fixture in conservative youth politics for years. His organization attracts thousands of students to events across the country.
Entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this, and as you know, these things can be very.
And for all the controversies that swirl around him, one thing is undeniable. He knows how to stir the pot. So when The View accused his organization of associating with neo-Nazis who had protested outside their student summit, Charlie didn't just tweet back. He fired off a cease and desist letter, and then he dropped the bomb, a $100 million lawsuit. It was the moment everything shifted. This wasn't just about defending his organization. This was about challenging the megaphone that is The View, a show that has, for over a decade, operated like a daytime version of Thunderdome, where ideas go to die and groupthink is king. It's not a debate table, it's a coliseum. And when Charlie walked in swinging, it was clear he wasn't there to entertain. He was there to dismantle. Sunny Hostin's meltdown didn't take long to follow. On live TV, the tension was palpable. She went from courtroom confidence to daytime distress, visibly rattled. The accusation had struck a nerve, and more importantly, so had the lawsuit. The moment became viral gold. Sunny unraveling, Whoopi Goldberg staring straight ahead like she'd seen this show before, and the audience caught between awkward laughs and stunned silence. The show that usually controls the narrative had just lost the script. And Charlie?
Complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it, but we're not going to let this go because you should not be able to smear.
He was just getting started. He went on primetime news, not with the arrogance of a man seeking attention, but with the focused energy of someone who'd had enough. This isn't about me, he said. It's about our students. He talked about the 5,000 young people who had attended the Turning Point event, their names, their reputations now dragged into a televised smear. I'm a public figure, he continued. I get attacked every day. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds with lies, that's not just unethical, it's inexcusable. Let's talk about that number. $100 million. It's a figure so large it almost sounds like a joke. But it's not. It's symbolic. It says, this isn't just a slap on the wrist. This is a reckoning. For years, The View has operated as though it's untouchable.
5,000 high school and college kids, and then just be able to walk away with it. And the reason they felt they needed to.
No matter what they say, who they smear, or how wildly inaccurate their claims are, they keep broadcasting. Because for them, outrage is the business model. The louder they yell, the more people watch. And the more people watch, the more the network profits. But what happens when someone says enough? What happens when the punchline punches back? Charlie Kirk's lawsuit isn't just about what was said. It's about the culture that allows it. The View, with its curated cliques and choreographed outrage, has turned political discourse into daytime drama. They don't interview guests. They ambush them. They don't challenge ideas. They ridicule them. It's not conversation. It's performance. And in that performance, they've convinced millions of viewers that opinions can be facts if you say them loud enough. But in court, there are no audience claps, no commercial breaks, just facts, evidence, and consequences. Sunny, once the show's legal voice of reason, now finds herself entangled in actual legal trouble. Her law degree, which once gave her the authority to speak with certainty on national television, now hangs like a question mark over her credibility. She's no longer the one delivering verdicts. She's the one being asked to defend her own words. And as this unfolds, Something bigger is happening in the background. The media world is watching. Because if Charlie Kirk wins, if even part of this lawsuit sticks, it sets a precedent.
Do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive,
That just because your name is followed by opinion host, you're not exempt from accountability. That you can't just throw accusations on live TV and walk away without a scratch. That free speech doesn't mean free smear. Of course, there are those saying this is just political theater, that Charlie Kirk is using the lawsuit to boost his brand, that it's all a stunt. But even if it is, what does that say about The View? That they handed him the perfect opportunity? That their own recklessness made the stunt possible? And what about the apology? Yes, there was one. A carefully worded segment where the hosts backtracked, claiming they didn't mean to imply that Turning Point welcomed neo-Nazis. But it was too late. The damage was done. The footage was viral. The students were already marked, and no retraction can rewind that. The lawsuit, then, becomes more than legal action. It becomes a warning shot, not just to The View, but to every show, network, and influencer who thinks that if they wrap slander in sarcasm, it's safe from consequences. And inside The View's studio, the energy has changed. The swagger is still there, but it's more guarded. You can feel the producers whispering in the background, the legal team sifting through transcripts, the nervous glances exchanged before a bold take. Because now, everything could end up in discovery. Every joke could become evidence. Every segment could be Exhibit A. That kind of pressure does strange things to people, especially people who've spent years assuming they're immune. But maybe, immunity isn't what we need right now. Maybe we need vulnerability. Maybe we need accountability. Maybe it's time for the talk show to be talked about, for its words, its tone, and its power. Because this story isn't just about one show.
that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers, maybe the audience...
Or one host. It's about an entire media ecosystem built on volume instead of value. An industry where outrage is currency and slander is content. And maybe, just maybe, the lawsuit is the first real invoice being sent. Back in the headlines, Kirk doubles down. He appears on other platforms, calmly and surgically explaining that this is about restoring truth. About protecting young people from being collateral damage in a culture war they didn't sign up for. He's not suing because he's offended. He's suing because he believes someone has to draw the line. And at Turning Point events, something new is happening. Students aren't just fired up about politics, they're fired up about media. They're asking questions, they're holding cameras, they're watching the watchers. The narrative is shifting. And it's not just on college campuses, it's spreading. Meanwhile, inside The View, the script is tighter. The takes, safer. The laughter, slightly more forced. The show that once roared now tiptoes.
The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit this last weekend.
Yeah.
Because when every episode could land you in court, the punchlines stopped being funny. And somewhere, probably in a quiet legal office filled with binders and coffee-stained deposition notes, a team is preparing for the next phase of this battle. Because this isn't over. Not by a long shot. In fact, it's just the beginning. It doesn't just ask questions, it demands answers. That doesn't just push back, it calls out. That doesn't just clap back, it subpoenas. And for a world saturated with